Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 119. A bolt from the blue. Hung Jun, with his glaive in hand, was currently fighting a black monster. He killed that monster with a fierce slash, before rushing towards Li Jinglong. In this moment, Lu Su, who was standing in the corridor, took 2 quick steps, before he rose into the air. His entire body began to glow, and his antlers suddenly lengthened as he turned into a glowing youth hovering in mid-air, flying towards An Lushan. Sink into dreams, the Deer King's voice echoed through the heavens, as Lu Su flew past An Lushan. An Lushan could not help widening his eyes, Lu Su's glowing form reflected in his pupils. Lu Su waved his hand in a sword fingers pose, swiping them along the length of his antlers, before lifting them and tapping them gently against An Lushan's forehead. That touch sent up a series of invisible ripples. Immediately, An Lushan's eyes went dark, and he forgot to struggle. But with this simple spell, Lu Su's fingers were burnt by the black flames, and he suddenly rose into the air. In the blink of an eye, Hung Jun was already behind Li Jinglong, and he spread his hands apart. The pentacolor sacred light, fueled by the entirety of Hung Jun's cultivation over his lifetime, funneled into Li Jinglong's body like an angry sea. Right after that, Qiu Yangxi, Mo Rijin, and A Tai each called upon their cultivation and funneled it into Li Jinglong's body. Li Jinglong's martial robes fluttered in the wind, and his hands came together. The power of the heart lamp increased a second time, and behind him appeared a faint image of Dipankara. Everyone's eyes widened at this, and they watched Li Jinglong dumbly. In that moment, Li Jinglong rose into the air, his mana reaching the limit, to the point where it was nearing the levels needed to defeat a god. The glow enveloped his entire body, vaguely taking on the form of Dipankara's armor. His hair shortened in length, and along with his eyebrows, turned into blazing flames. The glorious eon of the past has concluded, where this light once enlightened all living beings, Li Jinglong's low, rich voice intoned. He turned slightly, his left hand laying flat as his right hand came to hover over his left, forming the shape of a lamp which he pushed forward. In that instant, thousands of rays of light burst forth, and that blinding light was almost solid as it, like flowing lines, focused on one point, pressing down towards An Lushan. With a wild bellow of pain, the black chi in An Lushan's body exploded forth, and his tremendous form slumped on the ground, unconscious. The heart devil left its physical shell behind as it let out an incensed roar. "It's out!" Mo Rijin shouted. Li Jinglong hadn't expected that An Lushan would be even harder to deal with than he had imagined. They had to finish this quickly, and he immediately rose into the air. The heart devil flew out of the atrium, and all of the members of the exorcism department leapt onto the roofs at that. Mo Rijin, Hung Jun. Hung Jun drew the pentacolor sacred light back, before shaking it out again. The bright light turned into a veil that covered the entire atrium. With a wave of his brush, Qiu Yangxi changed the color of the sky, and all of the structures around them turned into ink and drifted apart. The heart devil kept struggling, and Hung Jun watched, anxious beyond comparison. Lu Su, however, immediately sent him a glance, warning Hung Jun not to act recklessly. At this time, everyone split up. A bright light glowed around Li Jinglong's form. It was not the glow around the golden armor giant in Hung Jun's memories, but rather the glow of a god clad in armor made of white light. An endless brilliance shone forth from his left hand, shining upon that ball of devil chi, and under that bright light, the heart devil disintegrated continuously, its devil chi dissipating. "He's grown so powerful." That was Hung Jun's only thought. Li Jinglong had walked this journey with him, and his powerful confidence seemed to support him in growing more powerful. Li Jinglong splayed out his right hand, the sword of wisdom appearing in it, and he roared angrily, "Yaos and devils, scatter before me." With that, a blinding brilliance burst forth from the sword of wisdom in his hand, shooting directly for the center of the heart devil. The heart devil let out a wild shriek, and it trembled uncontrollably. This scene was reflected in Hung Jun's eyes, as he recalled that scene from in front of the Majao caves. That night, Li Jinglong had done the same, and in the next moment, what flew out from within the heart devil was Xiaoyu's Hunpo. The heart devil shrieked wildly, and the hand that Li Jinglong was holding his sword began to tremble. He put in all of his might into the sword, at an unprecedented level, and two sharp claws sprouted out of the heart devil, which gripped the sword of wisdom tightly. "Let me go," and Lushan's voice said. "You won't be able to hold out, let me go, whatever you want. I can give that to you." Li Jinglong simply continued to watch it, and he replied quietly, "You must die. For Hung Jun's sake, I will definitely kill you." As he finished speaking, Li Jinglong suddenly let out a loud bellow. His eyes widened, and white flames burst out of his eyes, greedily burning away the heart devil, which let out even more horrific, shrill wails. Under the onslaught of the white light, the devil flames over its body dispersed like sand on the breeze, flying every which way. The devil seed in the middle turned from black to purple, from purple to gray, and its contents slowly took shape. Inside it was a snake biting its own tail, and the instant the devil chi fully dissipated, the snake Han suddenly startled awake. It shrieked as it struggled, as if it was trying to break out of its fetters. Hung Jun shouted, "Stop!" He saw that the flames coming from Li Jinglong's eyes had turned golden, and he knew that he was burning away his own lifespan, forcibly calling upon his Genkai to ignite the Here Tea lamp. He immediately rushed over, hugging him forcefully around the waist. "Don't get close to him," everyone shouted. The moment that Hung Jun hugged Li Jinglong, he immediately felt that the light shone forth endlessly, different from the warmth that he felt every day. The bright light that Li Jinglong's body emitted scorched his soul, and what was even more painful was that over his heart, there was a seal that had formed from the same source. Under the influence of the heart lamp, the seal began to resonate, and it burned away at his soul like a scorching hot brand. Hung Jun gritted his teeth against the pain, grabbed Li Jinglong, and with a turn, barely managed to dodge that snake Han that had broken out of its chains. At almost the same time, the thunderous sound of a dragon's cry came from the distance. A black chiao passed through the layer of clouds, coiling in the night sky above, speeding towards the center of the Daming Palace. "Xiaoyu is here. How did it know of our plans?" Lu Su exclaimed. "This is impossible. Retreat." Qiu Yangxi bellowed. According to plan, everyone withdrew completely. Under the dome of the pentacolor sacred light, the central atrium was filled with diffused devil chi, and it swirled densely like ink, refusing to dissipate. Within that devil chi, a snake Han glowing with green light tried to attack again and again, shrieking as it searched for a weak point to break out. When Hung Jun hugged Li Jinglong, the glow around him immediately disappeared. The two of them rolled to the side, falling onto the ground of the central atrium. The flames in Li Jinglong's eyes slowly vanished, and his eyes went back to normal, though he looked confused. His innards roiled, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, but instead of being crimson red, that blood was golden. When that blood splattered on Hung Jun, he immediately felt as if it was burning him. His clothes burned away where the golden blood had fallen, and boils rose over his bright red flesh where Li Jinglong's blood touched. He, however, paid no attention to his own wounds, instead immediately funneling mana into Li Jinglong's body. "What are you doing?" Hung Jun shouted with great difficulty. Never in his wildest dreams had he thought that Li Jinglong would use a forbidden spell of this level. The horrifically strong power of the heart lamp barged around his innards, incessantly burning them away. Li Jinglong opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, only to spew out another mouthful of golden blood instead. The moment that Hung Jun pinned Li Jinglong, he sent his mana into him with a weng. The pentacolor sacred light that had been floating in the air above the atrium was absorbed into Li Jinglong's body, colliding with the strong power of the heart lamp within. With great difficulty, it steadied the heart lamp. Thankfully, it had been so fast, Thankfully it had only taken a single moment. If he had been even slightly later, Li Jinglong would have immolated under the power of the heart lamp exploding forth, turning into a spirit at the cost of calling down a god. Li Jinglong's gaze was lost, and it was only at this time that crimson red blood came trickling out of the corner of his mouth. Hung Jun immediately pulled out a medicine pill and fed it to him, but in that very same moment, the black Jiao Xiaoyu had already charged into the Daming Palace. Everyone had been hastily rushing about, and before they could retreat, Xiaoyu had already descended from the sky, landing in the central atrium, where it shifted into Yang Quozhong. Burning up his vital spirit to release the heart lamp's strongest power, as a substitute for the 6 artifacts of Akalanatha to dispel devil chi, Yang Quozhong intoned solemnly. Looks like for the sake of dealing with Mara, the Marquis of Yadan is truly willing to fling caution to the winds. Hung Jun held Li Jinglong, staring at Xiaoyu in shock and horror. Everyone had been scattered to the different corners, and Hung Jun replied darkly, "The snake Han that you wanted has already been released. Xiaoyu, our deal is done. But before this, no one informed me to come and assist in retrieving this third Han of mine," Yang Quozhong replied coldly. "You all were simply hoping to destroy my Hunpo as well, weren't you?" The snake Han revolved around Yang Quozhong. He stood beneath the sky filled with devil chi, studying Hung Jun and Li Jinglong with pity. Several times, Li Jinglong tried to rise, but he did not have the strength. Hung Jun's hands trembled, and he clenched Li Jinglong's palm tightly. "Are you trying to attack right now?" Yang Quozhong asked, pointing at the devil chi filling the sky. "Will you sacrifice yourself for the sake of absorbing and Lushan's devil chi into your own body? Then become Mara? I'm afraid that if you were to choose to become a devil right now, no one would be able to suppress you. Come, break through the seal that Li Jinglong has imposed on you, and consume this devil chi." Hung Jun was greatly shocked at that, and he asked, voice trembling, "How do you know that?" In that instant, everyone froze. Yang Quozhong smiled gently and replied, "Hung Jun, if I were to say that I watched you grow up, would you believe that? From the moment that you entered the exorcism department, every one of your movements have all been under my surveillance. Otherwise, how would I allow you all to run amok under my own nose?" In the span of a single breath, countless thoughts flashed through Hung Jun's heart. In the end, it was the one that was the clearest, as well as the most frightening, the one he was least willing to face. The Carpiao was filled with remorse as, trembling, it walked out from behind Yang Quozhong. In that instant, the atrium was dead silent. The Carpiao trembled incessantly, its legs quivering, and it wrung its hands again and again as it said, "Hung Jun, I'm sorry. You. Zhao Zilong, you." No matter what, Hung Jun could not bring himself to believe what he was seeing. "All of the members of the water tribe must listen to the orders of the Jiao and the dragons," Yang Quozhong said easily. "Just like how all of the birds of the world see the phoenix as their king. Such a simple principle, how did you not understand? 10 years ago, I sent out 6 fish Yao, and under my orders, they waded in the streams down at the foot of the Taihang Mountains for you. In the end, you ended up saving this one, so you and it were fated to be. You traitor." Morigin had never expected that on their side would be a spy that Yang Quozhong had planted so long ago. Hung Jun looked at the Carpiao, who took a few steps back. Its voice grew even more hoarse as it said, "Hung Jun, I'm sorry. Everyone, I'm sorry. I want to become a dragon, and if I can't be a dragon, being a Jiao is also okay." Hung Jun laid Li Jinglong down and slowly rose, his expression lost and confused. "Zhao Zilong," Hung Jun said, "have you been lying to me this entire time?" In that instant, countless memories of the past flashed through Hung Jun's mind, the Carpiao's fierce opposition when it learned that he and Li Jinglong were in love, the Carpiao's faltering response when they were discussing Xiaoyu, the Carpiao's hesitance to speak when they had been speaking of their plan. "I can't jump over the dragon gate," the Carpiao said quietly, as if it was speaking to itself. Those legends are all lies. It lifted its head up to watch Hung Jun, before turning and hiding behind Yang Qiuzhong's feet. I promised it, Yang Qiuzhong said earnestly, that once my 3 Hun and the various Qi of Mara returned to me, I would allocate it a little bit of dragon energy. That would assist it to become a dragon. This is a very profitable exchange. Shut up. Hung Jun roared, filled with grief and rage. Hung Jun Everyone rushed forward to stop him, but with a wave of his glaive, Hung Jun charged right for Yang Qiuzhong. The Carpiao let out a loud shout as it fled backwards, but with a shake, a huge sword appeared in Yang Qiuzhong's hand, blocking Hung Jun's throwing knives. With a wave of his glaive, Hung Jun collapsed the pillars of the palace halls around them, but Yang Qiuzhong's form suddenly scattered, before it rose into the air, joining into one with the devil Qi. Go! Mo Rijin thundered. Lu Su went forward and grabbed Hung Jun. Everyone moved to withdraw as Hung Jun let out a wild bellow of rage and hatred. Yang Qiuzhong's entire body had turned into a black dragon bursting with devil Qi, and it circled in the air, drawing that snake Hun into its own body. Hung Jun, however, spread out his palms, beginning to fight Yang Qiuzhong for that devil Qi. Hung Jun. Mo Rijin rushed towards Hung Jun, but Hung Jun rose into the air, his eyes filled with rage as he shouted, "Xiaoyu!" In that moment, from within Hung Jun's chest cavity appeared the outline of the devil seed, but the seal that Li Jinglong had enforced on it firmly chained it down. Hung Jun's heart twisted at that, and it hurt so much that he had no choice but to hunch over in pain. "You aren't able to break through Li Jinglong's seal," Yang Qiuzhong said coldly. "It is already over. Why not give it a try?" Hung Jun gritted his teeth, and he pulled his left hand towards himself as he pushed his right hand out. With a huge boom, the sky's worth of black Qi, along with the snake Hun, was drawn at lightning speed towards Hung Jun's hand. It came to a stop in front of him, but because it was unable to get into his body, it could only revolve around the outside of his body, around the devil seed. Even the devil Qi inside Yang Qiuzhong's body was forcibly sucked away by that power. "How? This is impossible!" Yang Qiuzhong roared angrily. Hung Jun did not end up drawing that devil Qi into his own body, instead gathering it into his hand, turning it into external power that he sent roaring towards Yang Qiuzhong. Yang Qiuzhong was immediately sent flying backwards as he fell prey to that attack from the black Qi. With that heavy blow, the tiles went flying every which way, and his body began to break apart. Right after, Yang Qiuzhong struggled violently, and under the assault of the devil Qi, turned into a black dragon. It was at this moment that Qiu Yangxi's voice sounded from the corner. He called, "It's my turn now, Xiaoyu." Hung Jun immediately looked up towards Qiu Yangxi, and with his left palm facing up and his right hand forming the sword fingers pose, he formed a magic seal, shouting, "Rise!" In the central atrium of the Daming Palace, all of the wooden pillars drifted away in all directions under that burst of wind, and everything collapsed. A magic array, glowing with a brilliant blue light, appeared from the ground, its light shooting directly for the sky. In the sky, above the clouds, countless dragon souls winking with light came flying towards them, circling around the array. In the array, the blue light kept rising, turning into motes of light. Yang Qiuzhong roared as he turned into the black Jiao Xiaoyu, rushing about in all directions. "You first planned to get rid of Mara, luring me here to retrieve my Hunpo, then you laid down an array in the central atrium of the Daming Palace, so that you could capture me and bring me back to the bottom of the tower. Truly a well-played game of chess," the black Jiao roared. But Li Jinglong's Dipamkara sacred mantra was already disrupted in the middle. "What will you face me in battle with? Young dragon subduing saint. Did you think that you could contain me with a single array?" Qiu Yangxi was incomparably anxious, and his hands trembled as he put in all his effort to maintain the functioning of the array. The dragon souls appearing in the sky grew increasingly numerous, and their numbers were already enough to blanket the earth below. Like a vast sea, they floated in orbit around the array. Hung Jun. Absorb the devil chi. Lu Su shouted loudly, amidst the hubbub. Hung Jun came back to himself, pulling the devil chi in the area towards himself, and with the snake hun as well, pulled it all into a pitch-black ball of energy. That snake hun, along with the devil chi, struggled wildly to escape Hung Jun's control. Xiaoyu immediately turned its head, roaring as it charged towards Hung Jun, trying to swallow that black-colored pearl of devil chi. Guard it well. Li Jinglong had stood up at some point, and his voice thundered out from behind Hung Jun. Right after that, the power of the heart lamp coiled through Hung Jun's body, freezing him in place, before dragging him back 3 jong, where he collided with Li Jinglong's embrace. Right then, Li Jinglong lifted his sword, barely managing to summon up the last of his strength to make the sword glow with a bright light. When this light shone on Xiaoyu, it immediately let out an incensed roar and writhed angrily. The grey wolf and white deer once again rushed forward, charging at Xiaoyu several times, managing to protect Li Jinglong and Hung Jun. At this moment, he had one hand wrapped around Hung Jun, while the other propped himself up against the sword. He said brokenly, "Xiaoyu, it is not good to be too confident in the spies that you planted." Hung Jun turned his head swiftly. Li Jinglong stood up, pointing his sword once again at Xiaoyu in the middle of the array, and he summoned all his strength as he said, "Today, we must take care of you, as well." Jinglong. Hung Jun landed on the ground and rushed towards Li Jinglong. The black Jiao charged towards them with a cry, but the grey wolf and white deer suddenly appeared from both sides. The grey wolf pounced towards the black Jiao, biting down fiercely on its body, while the white deer locked its antlers with the black Jiao's sharp ones, gracefully somersaulting through the air, sending Xiaoyu twisting head over heels as he was sent back towards the ground. "So your true target today was me," Xiaoyu roared, turning and rising into the air again, circling around the central atrium, gulping down the devil chi all around them. "I imagine that even your most commendable spy doesn't know of the array in the Daming Palace, isn't that right?" Li Jinglong said, completely exhausted. "Xiaoyu, it's time for you to resign yourself to your fate. With just your skills." Xiaoyu suddenly bellowed, before spewing out a cloud of dark Jiao breath that crackled with lightning, which shot swiftly towards the wounded Li Jinglong. Hung Jun immediately summoned up the pentacolor sacred light, doggedly holding it up. "Is the spell still not done?" Mo Rijin yelled at Qiu Yangxi as he landed on the ground. Qiu Yangxi was still muttering the incantation swiftly. Hundreds of thousands of dragon hun had come flying from over the horizon, casting an indigo blue light over the entirety of the summit where the Daming Palace was located. A vortex of energy grew within the palace, spreading outwards, and the area in front of the mountain had become a sea of light. End chapter. Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 120. The Black and White Hourglass. Xiaoyu laughed coldly. "Accept your death." It gathered up an even larger ball of Jiao flames, spitting out devil flames crackling with lightning, but from a corner, another voice grew even clearer. "If my body resides in the depths of the darkness, then I will light my soul on fire, to burn away the impurities of the world. If my body resides in the blazing flames, then I will light my soul on fire, to set alight the eternal flames of the world. If my body resides in the emptiness of the air above, then I will light my soul on fire, in order to turn it into a brilliant light that shines on the world." Atai's warm voice recited the words of the spell. His vest fluttered, and his indigo eyes turned deep red. His head of brown hair turned a fiery red, and the golden signet ring of the sacred flame that burned away all impurities floated in the space between his hands. Countless symbols appeared on the signet ring, and they were a bright red, as if they had been scorched in a blazing flame. Xiaoyu turned swiftly, and Atai shouted, "In the name of Zoroaster, on behalf of Ahura, I call forth this light that will burn away all impurities. Sacred flame, burn away all the darkness. With that, Atai raised the golden signet ring, waving it ever so slightly towards Xiaoyu. The two circular sides of the signet ring glowed with a bright light, and the side facing Xiaoyu spewed out an explosive burst of blazing flames. A wave of brilliant light shot out of the side facing Atai and sank into his body, giving him wings that, when spread, were enough to cover the entirety of this dark night. In the distant mountains, it was as if a brilliant comet had appeared in the Daming Palace, its tail pointing towards the north. Its light shone over an area of almost 10 li, and amidst the darkness of the mountains, the trees and the rocks turned snowy white. Instantly, the Daming Palace became a sea of flames, which blazed merrily. Qiu Yangxi was still chanting his incantation, that spell was almost complete, and when the blazing flames swept over Xiaoyu, his body of dragon scales was charred by these sacred flames. And when the sacred flame appeared, it acted like the heart lamp, burning away the black qi in the air, and the black qi was pushed away by that. Hung Jun searched all around him for where the Carpiao had gone, only to see that the Carpiao had been trapped by a wooden pillar that was on fire, and it was crying out loudly amidst the rubble. "Help me, help me!" Hung Jun could not stop gasping for breath, and the red of the firelight reflected in his eyes. Several times, the Carpiao tried to lift up its feet and hop over, but there were flames beyond the flames, and the ground was burning hot. If it waited any longer, it would turn into grilled fish. Li Jinglong nudged Hung Jun gently, and finally, Hung Jun could not bear to see it struggle any longer. He withdrew the pentacolor sacred light and sent it across the sea of flames. Thanks to the pentacolor sacred light, the fiery pillars that filled the area were sent flying. The Carpiao was astonished, and it turned its head to look in the direction where the spell had come from, only to meet Hung Jun's incensed gaze. "You bastard, fuck off!" Hung Jun roared. The Carpiao. It was also at this very moment that Qiu Yangxi's spell was finally finished, and he shouted, "Raise high the yellow pennant, and let the gleam of the spear ring forth, seal." In the next instant, the grey wolf, white deer, and Atai all withdrew from the array at the same time. The thousands of dragon souls in the world cried out at once, and two glowing arrays appeared, one in the air and one on the ground, pressing mercilessly down towards each other. In the air, Xiaoyu once again took the form of Yangquazhong. His robes were in tatters from the flames, and his hair was charred black. A number of wounds appeared across his body, weeping fresh blood. He lifted his head to look towards the sky, before lowering it to look towards the ground. Qiu Yangxi's plans were slightly spaced apart, and he placed them in front of him. His left palm represented the yang, and his right represented the yin, as he slowly pushed them together. His face was soot black from the flames, and tears leaked uncontrollably from his eyes. "Go back to where you belong," Qiu Yangxi said coldly. The spell was on the verge of coming to completion. Brilliant lightning arced between the top and bottom arrays, and the dragons gathered, all of them coiling around that seal with their ghostly bodies, before closing it around it. Even if Yangquazhong wanted to escape, it was impossible to do so. Yangquazhong murmured, "It's too early to say so." And with that, he waved his sleeve, and in his hand appeared an odd hourglass, filled with black and white sand, with a golden dragon coiling around it. With a twist of his fingers, he slowly turned that hourglass over. The sand in the hourglass began to drift apart as if it was alive, before the grains mixed again and, revolving around each other, slowly began to flow from the upper bulb to the lower bulb. But what flowed down was only the black grains of sand, the white grains remained in the upper bulb. Everyone immediately felt as if their bodies had fallen under the control of some powerful force. Their consciousnesses remained clear, but their bodies began to move backwards uncontrollably through time. Hung Jun wanted to shout, yet he could not make a sound. Qiu Yangxi wanted to warn the rest of them, but he had no way to turn his head. Between the heavens and the earth, an odd change was happening at a swift speed, because of that hourglass, time was flowing backwards. Chu Yangxi's palms once again parted, and the array split apart, moving towards the heavens and the earth. The dragon souls flew back into the sky in a strange pattern, returning to the divine vein, returning to nothingness. The Carpio ran backwards into the sea of flames, and the pieces of burning wood came flying back from all sides, returning to the fire. The pentacolor sacred light rose into the air again, returning to Hung Jun's hand. The blaze that had filled the sky gathered towards Atai's palm, pulled back into his signet ring. With another shake of his body, Yang Qiuzhong transformed back into the black Xiao. The scales that had charred and fallen returned piece by piece back to his body, and fresh blood flew upwards from the ground, seeping back into the Jiao's body. The grey wolf and white deer leapt down from its body, flying backwards through the air. Hung Jun's hands dispersed the black qi outwards, and the devil qi grew dense and thick. He then knelt on the ground with one knee, holding Li Jinglong, the two of them watching each other fixedly. Golden blood appeared across Hung Jun's body, flew backwards, and went back into Li Jinglong's mouth. The Genkai throughout his body, as well as the power of the heart lamp, began to flow in reverse, and his meridians reformed. Hung Jun then grabbed his waist, and they rose into the air, floating high above the atrium. Every structure of the Daming Palace that had been destroyed clattered back into the air, returning to their original positions, returning to their original state. The devil Qi came billowing through the air again, only to be sucked back in by the snake Hun, taking on the form of the heart devil. The light of the flames flew past at an odd angle, shooting from the two sides towards the center, before sinking into Li Jinglong's eyes. He and Hung Jun parted, and Li Jinglong's sword of wisdom embedded itself in the heart devil's body. The light that the heart devil had exploded with gathered up again, and Li Jinglong then pulled the sword of wisdom out. His left hand stuck out in front of him, while his right hand lifted his sword over his shoulder, holding the pose he had been in a second before he struck down with the sword. The sand of the hourglass in Yang Qiuzhong's hand had almost all trickled through, and in this moment, the expression he wore made him look as if he was a divinity looking down on all the living beings of the world. The four directions compose all of space, the past to the present compose all of time, his voice said, in this world where time had almost come to a stop. You all have already done your very best, but the heavens will not bend to the wishes of man. Truly, what a pity. The last grain of sand fell. Just as Li Jinglong was about to turn, however, Yang Qiuzhong flipped that hourglass so that it was horizontal, holding it in his hand. The reversal of time had ended, but it had been stopped before the very last moment. The last grain of black sand was stuck in the neck. And an area a 3-jong radius from Yang Qiuzhong just so happened to encompass where Li Jinglong, Lu Su, Hung Jun, Mo Rijin, Chu Yangxi, and Atai were standing. Everyone put in all their might, but they found themselves unable to move. Yang Qiuzhong casually slapped Hung Jun's back with a palm strike, putting some of the power of a jiao into it, and as if mountains had split under that strike, Hung Jun immediately felt his innards explode. His vision spun, yet he could not cough that blood up. Li Jinglong. I will deal with you all in a bit, Yang Qiuzhong said coldly, one hand holding that hourglass. After the heart devil reformed, it was still struggling. It looked towards Yang Qiuzhong and roared, Xiaoyu. Yang Qiuzhong lifted his head, and likewise, the outline of a snake formed from devil qi appeared. It opened its mouth and slowly began to suck in that heart devil, which roared wildly, let me go. I've nurtured you for this long for the sake of this very moment, Yang Qiuzhong murmured. What harm is there in becoming one with me? It was just at this moment that two throwing knives flew out from a far corner of the atrium, one after the other. They shot out across the ground, sketching out two arcs, and the green grass growing out from the cracks in the cobbles were sent flying by that breeze. Leaves danced through the air as those two throwing knives, revolving as they flew, shot towards Yang Qiuzhong from behind, heading for the artifact in his hand. At the same time, there was a flash of light. With two pangs, the two ends of the hourglass were struck by those throwing knives. The grains of sand soundlessly exploded forth, shining as they danced on the breeze. Yang Qiuzhong immediately turned. Ashinakayan, holding another two throwing knives, stood up, saying, "My back hurt from lying slumped there." Speaking of which, Chancellor Yang, none of you did notice that there was one more person on the ground. Yang Qiuzhong. As soon as the hourglass broke, everyone regained their freedom of movement. Hung Jun spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground, while Li Jinglong let out a bellow of despair and rushed forward. This time, he had already recovered with the rewinding of time, and Yang Qiuzhong immediately realized that he had made a critical error. In this place, aside from Hung Jun, everyone was still full of energy. Li Jinglong had the sword of wisdom in hand, Tegla had the ring of the sacred flame on him, and Qiu Yongxi was the dragon-subduing saint, who had specially set out to capture him. The Grey Wolf and White Deer's powers were at their peak. As for Ashinakayan, when he had seen him fight in Dunhuang, he had been able to call down the war god of the Zoroastrian religion to temporarily reside in his body. And the thing that he relied on the most, the hourglass that could turn back time and undo all causes, had already been destroyed. Li Jinglong breathed harshly. With the sword of wisdom in hand, an uncontrollable rage appeared in his eyes as he stood guard in front of Hung Jun, his gaze fixed on Yang Qiuzhong. That gaze felt like a scorching flame, and even if it cost him his own life in exchange, he would not feel regret for that. Blood dribbled out of the corners of Hung Jun's mouth. The meridians all throughout his body had been almost completely destroyed by that burst of Yang Qiuzhong's Qiao energy, but thankfully, he had inherited a half-Yao body from his father. If a mortal had been the one to take that palm strike from just now while completely unguarded, they would have immediately exploded into a mess of flesh and blood and perished on the spot. Even with that, Hung Jun had not been able to call upon the Genkai in his body to protect him, so he had been gravely wounded. His eyes were unfocused and open, and fresh blood seeped forth from his nose and mouth. "Parley," Yang Qiuzhong immediately said. "You will not be able to kill me, nor will I be able to kill you. Take Hung Jun to get his wounds seen to immediately." But Li Jinglong had already lost all reason, and with a wild roar, he rushed forward. This was the second grave error that Yang Qiuzhong made. He originally thought that Li Jinglong would remain rational no matter what, and when he was judging his opponents and determining the situation at hand, he always treated Li Jinglong as a powerful and rational opponent. But he had never expected that Li Jinglong's rage would erupt so suddenly, to the point where he would lose all ability to judge and consider the situation at hand, where he wouldn't even listen to what Yang Qiuzhong was saying. In this moment, Li Jinglong was dominated by his sole wish, which was to kill him. But instantly, Yang Qiuzhong realized another hint that had been set down a long time ago. It was impossible for Li Jinglong to suddenly lost all sense of reason. The only explanation possible was, someone else had laid down another seal. This deduction, however, came too late. Yang Qiuzhong had to admit to himself that despite his loss this time, it had not been in vain. He lowered his head to look at the sword of wisdom in Li Jinglong's hand, piercing through his own chest, and he immediately made a very clear-headed decision. He immediately shed his physical form, his hunpo flying out from that mortal shell. This decision saved his life, as well as his 1,000 years of cultivation, because in that instant, Li Jinglong took on another form. The sword of wisdom in his hand glowed with a golden light, which crept up along his arm and over his whole body, transforming him into a warrior clad in golden armor. As expected, Xia Yu's hunpo, with black chi coiling around it, rose into the sky. With a single glance, he knew that he had fallen into another trap that his opponent had laid down over 10 years ago. A golden light poured forth from Li Jinglong's entire body, wrapping around him to form the armor of Dipankara around him. In this instant, Akalanatha took over his body, and the sword of wisdom flew out of Yang Qiuzhong's body, arcs of tangled light coming from it like bolts of lightning, which wildly destroyed the black chi left in his body. Lu Su rushed forwards and picked up Hung Jun. Mo Rijin shouted, "Zenchi! Don't touch him!" A Tai shouted, "Back away!" Everyone had no choice but to stand by and watch Li Jinglong. That golden light was too strong, and none of them could approach, as if even their eyes would be burnt blind by that light. Qiu Yangxi suddenly came back to his senses, and he hurriedly chanted the incantation, his hands circling around each other, before he wrapped them around each other in front of him. The gravel in the broken hourglass turned into ribbons of light and were drawn back into Qiu Yangxi's hand, where they gathered into a ball of yin and yang that revolved slowly. And Xiaoyu kept struggling, the flesh and blood body of a human slowly morphing into that of the black Qiao. It was still pinned firmly in place by the sword of wisdom, and the devil Qi in its body was completely burned away under that golden light. The devil Qi evaporated into steam, which billowed into the sky and returned to the divine vein. Xiaoyu opened its mouth wide and let out a wild roar, before lowering its head and spewing out black Qi, once again releasing the heart devil and the snake hun that it had absorbed before this. "Watch out!" Lu Su shouted. He handed Hung Jun over to Mo Rijin, while he himself turned into the white deer and charged forth. He wanted to make Li Jinglong calm down, so that he could prevent the heart devil from entering him, but he hadn't expected that that revolving ball of black Qi's target was not Li Jinglong, but rather the corpse of Enlushan, lying in a corner of the atrium. As soon as the heart devil was released, it immediately rushed towards Enlushan. With a loud boom, it sank into his body. Enlushan suddenly opened his eyes. No one had expected that to prevent Li Jinglong from burning away all that devil Qi that Xiaoyu had just absorbed, it would choose to return the devil Qi to Enlushan. "Catch him!" The scene immediately devolved into chaos. The white deer turned and charged towards Enlushan, only for Mo Rijin to shout, "Yangxi, stand guard over here." As soon as Enlushan woke, he could no longer spare any effort for fighting. He leapt into the air, countless balls of flowing devil Qi appearing around him, wildly plummeting towards the earth like a shower of meteorites. In this instant, Enlushan was simply seeking to escape. He poured in all his effort, the meteors of darkness exploding wildly across the palace. Lu Su, Mo Rijin, and the rest of them were all forced to retreat back to the ground. The only person who could control the ring on Enlushan's finger, Li Jinglong, had already lost all reason, and he was currently facing down Xiaoyu. Enlushan flew into the air, and with a flash, his body vanished just like that. Fuck. Mo Rijin was incensed beyond belief. At the same time, the devil Qi that Xiaoyu had gathered over the course of many years had already been almost all wiped out by Li Jinglong clad in his golden armor. What was left was a snake hun, glowing with a blue light. Xiaoyu finally could not hold back any longer, and opened its gaping, bloody maw, letting out a wild shriek. "Seal it!" A Tai shouted towards Qiu Yangxi, coming to a sudden realization. Qiu Yangxi was already chanting the incantation, but it would take a long time to reactivate that dragon subjugation array. Xiaoyu drew upon his Neodon, releasing the last of his power, and amidst the huge boom, the floor of the atrium caved in suddenly. Hung Jun leaned into Mo Rijin's embrace, murmuring, "Jing, Long." Mo Rijin shouted, "Hung Jun." The meridians through all of Hung Jun's body had been destroyed. In his heart meridian, Li Jinglong's seal had almost been fully eaten through, and the devil Qi was slowly corroding his whole body. Everyone was gathered around him, each of them drawing on their mana and sending it into Hung Jun's meridians, helping him to protect his heart meridian. "It hurts so much." A distant yet clear voice came to Li Jinglong's ears, causing his heart to immediately jolt in fear. "Dad! Mom, save me, it hurts so much, ah! Derenja! It won't hurt anymore. Very soon, it won't hurt anymore. Set alight my primal hun, and scatter my troupeau." The golden armor that Li Jinglong was clad in vanished, and he asked, his voice trembling, Hung Jun. Hung Jun's eyes were wide but unseeing, and fresh blood trickled non-stop out of his mouth as he muttered brokenly, Jing, Long. Li Jinglong's consciousness had finally returned, and with a great bellow, he sent Xiaoyu flying back with a single blow from his sword. Xiaoyu let out a wail of pain, its green jiao blood pouring forth, and it knocked over the wall of the Daming Palace, plummeting into a deep valley. Li Jinglong turned and rushed towards Hung Jun, grabbing him. He called up the power of the heart lamp and pressed it down against the left side of his chest. The heart lamp's power entered the meridians all throughout Hung Jun's body, and amidst the terrible pain, Hung Jun felt that warmth. The seal in his heart was once again strengthened, and that white light poured in non-stop, causing him to lose consciousness and fall into a beautiful dream. End chapter.